can at least document the programs we've had and had them on our website too, so you can either rewatch or send out to our club members that haven't seen them before. But anyway, I was kind of joking doing this program again. I'm like, you've had me for 7 years. What could I possibly tell you that might be new? So if you've seen it before, then just smile, and if it's something new, then but as I was kind of going through things this time, I mean, we titled the program this year At Home for the Holidays. And I think it's so nice to be back in person this year too, right? And as I was pulling things out and preparing, I'm like, I think I'm just gonna start decorating for Christmas when I take this home today, instead of putting it back and bringing it out. But I think that that's kind of what, at least I felt, where this kind of disconnect a little bit that we've had 2020. And I feel like, I don't know where 2020 ended and stopped in 2021. I feel like it's all just kind of rolled in together. But this year for the holidays, I'm really excited about having more of what feels like the holidays for me. So that being said, as you know, when I come to speak to our club, I really like to present things that you can do yourself at home, and that you don't have to have a license to go to a wholesale florist or have things flown in like I do when I'm actually planning bigger events, but things that you can get at your grocery store and at our local nurseries, and make it feel like you did something special in your homes as well. Also, so many of you don't bring in fresh trees anymore. I know a lot of you in this group pull out your artificial trees and artificial garlands, and we love doing that because why? Because they last, right? And the cleanup is much easier, and they preserve really well. But I love the smell of the holidays, and that smell to me is fresh pine. So what I want to show you today is some things that you can really bring in the sense of the season, even if you're doing your artificial trees and garlands and that sort of thing. So, and I was telling Darcy, I'm always on this program the beginning of November, and none of the stuff is out yet. So I always have to be super creative, like where I'm pulling the greens for, because in just a few weeks, you'll have all the abundance and all the holiday greens at your fingertips. But these are things that I know that you can do. So I was at Tagawa's in Parker yesterday. I love going there during the holiday season because they have such a great supply of fresh greens. And if you've never been there, if you go back into the section where they keep the live Christmas trees, not only that, it's an incredible place to get a live Christmas tree if you're a fresh Christmas tree person, which I am. I'll take the mess. I mean, I just do. But they'll have a big table back there, and you can buy Christmas greens by the pound. And they have, they usually have berry juniper, which is one of my favorite ones to use. They'll have a whole selection of different greens that they have had shipped in big boxes. And you literally can just pile them into a bag, and they weigh it, and you're out your door. And I have found that they are the best place for getting in bulk greenery for adding to your outside urns at your front porch, or mantelpieces or baskets in the house or whatever. So keep that in mind. So I was at Tagawa's yesterday, and I bought these fresh junipers. And I think for those of you that do artificial trees in your house, having at least 1 or 2 something live in a tree form in your house is a great way to kind of bring in the season, and it's an easy way for you to maintain it, and the cleanup is easy for you as well. Plus, these sizes are really great, and you can leave them outdoors after the season in potted urns on your patios, or add into a hedge line in your yard. This is my absolute favorite tree. And before a big windstorm came in last year and knocked over these urns I've had forever, I usually have like 4 to 5 feet tall of these cypress at my front porch, because I love decorating them during the holidays. It's really easy to add lights to them. Seasonally decorate around the base, depending on what season. In the summertime, I'll plant flowers around them. In the fall, I'll start doing gourds and everything else, and then I'll take those out and put lots of fresh greens and berries and everything for the winter. But to have inside for a tabletop tree is so great. So this is just an antique old dough bowl that I have, but a basket would work well. There's so many great woven baskets even at Target. to just plop a tree in and have it adorn the base of your fireplace, or in a bedroom, or on a mantle or serving board if you're entertaining this year, or just on an area that's a display when you come in your house. So on this one, I actually put beach towels on the bottom of it to kind of raise it up, and then I just had kind of a burlap tablecloth I laid down, and then I just piled it with some of my favorite ornaments. And the reality is that I have so many ornaments I don't put out anymore. I think as my kids have gotten older and older, like I mean, I used to just bring up like the haul, so to speak, and now I'm just bringing up a few boxes. So what do you do with those pretty ornaments you aren't using? We'll start filling vessels with them in the house and putting trees around them. So this is what I love doing, and it's a great use to, again, show off pieces that you have in your home that you might not be using all the time, but it's fun to find a place for them. The other thing is to add, that's really easy to do in the home. I love lavender, love it. And this time of year too, you can usually find heather. I love the white form, but the pink is kind of fun as well. But you can do table displays with these, and again, I got these at Tagawa's. It's a great time to go for all, and the sections you can go into are the fairy garden sections, because it's small plants, so you can get, I'm off camera! Sorry, Barbara Collins. Little cypress trees, and all of these little things. So for me, I like doing vignettes as well, and especially if you've already, I'm gonna come to the center so you don't have to worry on the camera. I love cloches. For those of you that used to shop in my store, I love cloches. But again, if you're doing artificial in the house, it's really nice to set up some vignettes by just using a tray, and you wouldn't double tray it, but this is just more of, because I'm here. Where you could just highlight a few pretty things of the season, whether it be, to have, and then maybe put, some little birds down on the bottom, or a crown, or maybe you have a holiday portrait of your grandchildren or your family or whatever, and just have vignettes sitting on a coffee table, or sitting on an ottoman in a guest room. Just little things of the season that you can add that are still fresh. You could fill it all out with greens, candles, or whatever, but this is why I love picking up little things like this. For those of you that saw the video that we put out last year, since we weren't meeting in person, I like tucking these in stockings too. I mean, I wouldn't keep it there all month, but that extra fluff you add on Christmas Eve once everyone's down, and things look a little different and a little more festive when people get up on Christmas morning, but having these tucked into little stockings, or bedside tables. I always put these little trees in my kids' rooms when they come home for the holidays, just so they have something fresh and holiday smelling in their room as well. But I always find little urns or little pots. This is great in your powder room, bathroom too. It adds just that little bit of that pine scent without you having to haul, the tree in, so to speak. So look at what, I know you all have serving platters and trays, but that's really just a wonderful, wonderful way to use those. But along with that, this is where you could create a vignette with getting potted plants. It's another way to add texture, color, scents of the season on any sort of vessel. So I might, you can tuck a tree in with it, or fill it out with other ornaments. But it's so pretty to just add some fresh green in the home, and then where the spots are, I might stick some of my more smaller ornaments in with it, or I might tuck in fruits with it, pomegranates, pears. You could do artificial with that too, but this is a great way, again, to just add texture, color, and some dimension. Just some smaller areas from your home that will pair well with your artificial trees. But then again, they can be moved outside into your planter boxes, or urns or hedges once you're done with them with the season. Or if you're like me and the house is crazy with lots of kids, when they come home, you forget to water them and you toss them out because they're dead after the end of the day. And it's okay. We only need a few dollars for the pots. So, that's what I really like to encourage. The other thing I love about this season is I love adding light wherever I can. And so, and I think it's the season of light, right? Where we really are, in our darker days and the festivities of the holiday, it's really like bringing light in. So what I like to do too is literally just have, this is so dirty because I've been cutting on it for the last hour or so, but I will just fill whole trays full of just candles. And tea lights are so cheap. I mean, you can go almost anywhere and I buy these off of Amazon, and I'll get boxes of 100, and I mean, I'm paying less than $20 for them. So I mean, it's just a really easy way to add lots of light. And then what you can do for the holidays too, and so I'll sometimes have this as a full-on centerpiece on a dining room table or on an ottoman when someone comes in, and it's just full of glittering light. But then you can add, your seasonal greens around it if you wanted to. And again, this is real light, so they do light on fire. So you want to have things lower, but I might place things around it. But just alone, a huge tray full of light, and then you have your other, decorations around. These are super simple things you can do that have huge impact in a space, and it just brings in that cozy, feel of the season as well. So, the other thing is we'll get on to designing, because I know that's why you really want me here. So, what I've done is, again, these are things you can get yourself. And so I hit the local grocery stores around here, and I will tell you, you're probably seeing it already. Who has seen a decrease in the quality of flowers in our store since COVID? Okay, it's super frustrating, and it's really affected the design world, the floral design world, big time. Because when COVID came in, nothing was being shipped out. Weddings were being canceled, venues were being closed. I mean, the growers, and they were literally throwing millions of dollars away of produce that couldn't be shipped, couldn't be used. And it's affected your supply chains in your store, because a lot of the flowers that we do get in your markets here, they are grown in California, but a lot of them come from elsewhere in the world. South America is a huge one for growing roses, and then of course our Dutch, our Holland markets as well. So I know it's super frustrating, but I didn't want to show you something that you couldn't get yourself. So I went to King Soopers, the big one down here, the other day. That's where I got all the blooms for, and Costco. And I will say, it's hit or miss. Sometimes Costco is fantastic, and I'll walk in and go, oh my gosh, look what they have in here today. I'm sure no one else does that. It's just me being weird at Costco, But, and then sometimes it's just, stuff that I'm not encouraged to work with. And then other times, King Soopers is incredible, down there. And I'll walk in and say, oh, okay, these textures, we can, work with this. So I would just keep out for that, and just know it is not a store thing, it is a whole industry thing, and we've just seen this decrease in the quality of blooms since COVID, and I'm hoping that's going to be picking up since weddings are now happening and things are more on the books for people for 2022 as well. So what I wanted to show you today, and I have two of these that two of you will go home with today as well, but I wanted to show you really what you can do with clippings from your yard or borrowed from the neighborhood, on your little box. I did that in your neighborhood 2 days ago, because none of the greens are out. And so it was like a 10-minute walk with a friend who lives in the village, and I, got a bushel of greens that are perfect, and nobody's gonna miss a branch or two, but you can smell how good it is, right? I mean, it's so good. So what I did with these are just regular, containers. And you do not have to have containers like this. I love making arrangements in like soup compotes. I mean, they're wonderful. Or any sort of vessel at your house. You all have vessels you're not using. Hardly any of us use our china anymore either, but they are incredible vases for arrangements, and it's a way for you to actually use them and show them off as well. But this is a square, just a plain square silver container. And what I did do with this is I filled it with Oasis. Do you all know what Oasis is? And again, so that I could be you, I went to the floral counter at King Soopers and said, can I buy some Oasis bricks, to make sure they had them in stock. And they have a huge container back there, and they sell them for $3.50 a thing. Okay, so you just soak these in water, and I usually will let them soak for an hour or two, to be quite honest. I just like kind of ignore them, leave them there, and know that I'm going to come back to them. And then I cut them to size and plop them in my containers. And I tried to get away from Oasis. I think I've talked about this before a few years ago, because it's a petroleum product, it's really gross and everything, but you know what? It's the best thing out there. I've tried the other natural stuff, I'm gonna be honest, and it's terrible. So you're gonna use a petroleum product and you're gonna be really good at arranging stuff. But I stick it in there, and it really just keeps the flowers in place, everything in place, and it keeps it hydrated, meaning that it'll last longer for you if you forget to water it. But when I do arrangements in the house, I will just take a water bottle and mist them. If I'm thinking about it when I walk by, maybe once a day or every other day. And then I'll actually pour water back down the arrangement maybe once a week, because it really does hydrate it well. Now the nice thing is, if you were to make these arrangements today, the greens are gonna last you through the season. The flowers are not, but you can just pull those out and replace those, but you have a nice green base for that. So what I did on this is strictly clippings from the neighborhood. I wasn't in any of your yard. I was in my friend's yard. These are just clippings from the neighborhood, and I like using different textures. And I think that's the thing about designing, is that it's all about the texture. So it's not just one green. So I'll get like 3 different kinds of greens, and what did they add for me? Do I like the shape of it? You know, that sort of thing. So the first thing I do is I'll do the greening. And so I literally just, and the reason I stopped on this one so I could show you some more. In addition to that, that's what kind of created my base. Then I did buy a couple of bundles of just greeny texture that they had at Costco. They had a horrible purple dyed flower in there, and I just threw that out. Please don't use that. Just only use the good stuff, okay? But what I'm going to do is, this is why I wanted to show you this, is just to add more texture. You really could leave it like this, right? I mean, but to kind of give it more depth and dimension, I'm just gonna add some more texture. So I'm just going to kind of tuck in, and then I'll continue to turn this around. I really do like designing on these. I mean, I serve on these all the time, but Lazy Susans are just so easy for designing when you're doing an arrangement, because you can actually see all sides and be turning it much easier than once the arrangement's getting big to pick it up, or you're walking around the table or whatever. So this is just a design hack that I use that just makes it really easy. But you can see there's all different, there's a little bit of eucalyptus in here, there's a little bit of boxwood, something else, I don't remember what that is, but I'll just kind of place it around to add some more texture. And the nice thing about this arrangement is, if you're using a square or a circle, then it really truly can be a great centerpiece. If you have a long rectangle table, I have a container for that we'll look at in a minute, but you can really make it as big as you want depending on the space, and you can see the container itself isn't that huge. The difference is how long or how short I'm cutting the stems. And so I can just continue to just build that out wild. The other thing about it is that you really, the reason I love these arrangements is you really can't go wrong on it. And I can say that because my sons can do this, and they have like 0 design skill whatsoever. Well, one's better than the other, but the other one. But it really is something that you can just kind of add your own personality to, but also if there's textures you like in the yard, to clip those. Unfortunately, because we've had such fabulous weather, I love picking twigs to add kind of a wild in with this, and there's just not a lot of twigs out right now. I mean, the tree that I usually grab from in my yard is still like as green as can be. But twigs, you know, that sort of thing. The other thing about these arrangements is it's nice to stick in your own collectibles in them as well, whether you have a fun ornament, and you can literally just tie, you can even just tuck it in, or you can tie it with a little wire and just have it more weighted in there. But you don't have to have flowers with this. And the other thing is, sometimes I do all green arrangements. I've done that at weddings before too, where it's all greens. Because I mean, look at the different style, shape, texture of greens. And so you can do an incredible arrangement just with greens by adding different greens in that provide different depth. See how that just added that? Can you see over here too? I feel like you're on the side.
No, you're right. I moved so other people can see.
But this is where it adds more depth, it adds more interest. You're able to appreciate the actual textures that are in the arrangement. And I think, and yeah, feel free to like move everything down. Yeah, can you see okay? Or I can move this off.
No,
Sure?
I'm fine.
Okay.
I can watch the video
Okay.
on our website. BC.org.
Okay, on this arrangement, so that, because I was going to work on several today, so I didn't want to do the whole thing from scratch on it. What I did do afterwards, after I did all the greens, and I saved this to show you how to add more texture in. Then I added flowers in the center. Can you see these? And we'll pass it around as well. And the thing about this is that, again, there's no like rhyme or reason to it. I usually will start with one color palette first. So I did the red first, and I kind of work in groups of threes. Can you see back here as well? I kind of did it at different heights. And I'll show you how I do that when we move into the other arrangements. But this technique, sometimes I'll just do all red or all white. So that's what I usually do. But it's fun to sometimes incorporate in the different blooms. This technique is called pavéing. It's a French technique where you're paving a path, so to speak. And I love doing it because it's kind of fun and whimsical, where you don't have to have, it's not so structured, like everything has a place kind of thing. So I kind of start sporadically in the corners with the reds, and then I ran a path through the middle with little spray roses. And you can see the spray roses are great because they're at different heights naturally on the stem. So when you place one stem in, do you see how it just gives it depth as well? So you can really see that it didn't take a lot to put in this arrangement to have a really nice, fresh scented centerpiece for your table. Coffee table or dining table, breakfast nook or whatever. These are also great on the smaller scale to just, again, do what I was talking about with trays and have a little arrangement on a tray with maybe a candle or whatnot, and that just adds small scents to a room of the season that brings in where your artificial doesn't. But it's also fun and brings in some texture that way that you wouldn't have otherwise. So I'm gonna set this one aside and show you on the other one.
Which I did study.
Yeah. So this one is a little shorter container, but I did the same thing, and I left it kind of open so you can see where I'm going to be at on this. So I did all the greens first, and you can see all the different textures that were added here. You know, all of this fresh stuff was from the clippings locally here, and then the other little textures, since they're not out in the yard, was just merely by a bundle that I got at Costco. And then you can see how I started kind of my sporadic pattern where I kind of did a grouping of 3 on either side there, kind of different heights, but you can see the oasis right in the middle. So the other reason I like these arrangements is, to me, they look like wild wreaths. And I love, I'll just move this out of the way too. The forest is taking over. They look like wild wreaths, and I love that sort of wild and yet symmetrical design for the holidays, because wreaths just represent so much and they're so inviting. So I love creating a wreath type of setting on solid surfaces on your table, because when you're sitting and if this is a centerpiece and you're eating there too, you get to see so much of it around instead of just one side. but it has this wild texture to it as well. But I just think it's so inviting. So what I did here, like I said, we did all the greening the same way I explained before, where I literally just kept going around, clipping, adding. You really cannot mess up on this. It doesn't matter how short it is, how long it is, they're all different styles. Just keep moving the arrangement around so that it's building out kind of in the same sort of size scale outside. And then I added my 6 roses there. Now this is where I kind of stopped because you can do a number of different things. You don't have to fill the whole center with blooms. The nice thing is this is where, if I was getting creative, I might tuck in a small vase and add another bloom there for additional height. Just to make it interesting, you know? Or you can, that's where you can then tuck in ornaments that you like. But it's all about adding visual texture, which creates interest. Do you see how that just made it different? The other thing I could have done instead of that, so like again, it doesn't have to be always blooms, is I might take my votive candles and tuck those in. And then, I think you've heard me talk about this before, I hate seeing oasis. That's my pet peeve with the oasis too. So if I tucked in these, then I'm gonna continue to add green around it, so you're not looking at that brick of green oasis. And that is something that I'm super anal retentive on, because I know it's terrible, and I can blame the person who trained me in the very beginning. But that's the first thing I do. I know it's terrible when I sit down at a lunch or whatever, I'm like, I can see the oasis. You know? I will never do that to you, I will not. But you can see how just adding in the votives, see that? And then I would just, like I said, I can see the oasis around the votives, but then I would just, you know, clip another green, another texture, and kind of build up around that so you're not seeing that. Or I might continue to add more blooms. But this is a super easy way to add light to your arrangement too, which just kind of glows in a little below the flowers and adds a nice glow to your arrangements. The other thing you can add is, like I said, add in whimsical thing. I love birds at Christmas time. I don't know why. I just love the kind of woodland look. So I might add, again, things that are important to me, things that excite me into arrangement, which kind of makes it interesting for those sitting at your table. And then again, if I need to build up around it, I would add more greens, tuck in little blooms, so that you're not seeing the mechanics of your arrangement. That's the only skill you need in this, is to cover up the mechanics. That's it. If you cover up the mechanics, you've done great. Because nobody cares. They're not, they're just gonna appreciate the smell and scents at your table. This would be another place where you could add in pears. And if you're gonna add in fruit, make sure they're really hard, because you don't want a fruit that's kind of ripe. That's then is when you stick in the bamboo skewer, it just kind of, it's gonna fall apart on you. But the reason I love adding food into the arrangements is that it's so textural. I mean, it just is so textural to do that. But your fruit, they're like flowers. It's a perishable good. And so they pair super well together to add food to your arrangements. So these are kind of things that I'll add in, maybe coming out the side too, so they're more down in the green area. And literally all I did is, I lost my pears, is I bamboo skewered the pears. Here we go. And then just kind of stuck them where I wanted. This is what I use with when I'm working with pomegranates as well. For those of you that have seen my fall arrangements, I love Brussels sprouts. I don't know why, and I hated them as a kid, but I love to eat them now. But I love designing with Brussels sprouts, and I'll skewer them the same way and tuck them in, and you know, pumpkin arrangements or whatever. The texture is so fantastic, and they're a great, you know, little round shape, and they just, it's like adding like a little thistle in or something. So you can see how you would add in, you know, other fruits. if I'm doing this all flowers, like I said, I don't like it to be so perfect. And that's why these are the perfect arrangements for you to be working on your house, because you do not have to be perfect. And that's what's always attracted me to French floral design, is it's super imperfect. It's super wild. The kind of theory behind it too is that you want it to look like you just came upon it in nature. Like that's, you know, you walked into the meadow. This is the pretty little vignette you see here. And the thing that's so awesome about that is that means when you're styling, you don't have to be worried, oh, is it need to be here because that's there, or any of that. It's not, well, I guess the best way I can describe it, it's not FTD. Let's, you know, it's very, where it has to have so many yellow flowers, you know, whatever, but it's more of how the arrangement kind of forms while you're arranging it. And I think once I found my rhythm in like French floral design, I felt so much freer designing, because the arrangement just kind of takes its shape as I'm going. And I'm able to highlight just, you know, different textures that really show off the beauty of all things that are in your arrangement. So in this one, I am just gonna add flowers, but as you see, I'm cutting the stems shorter because on this particular arrangement, since it would be sitting on a flat surface, centerpiece, coffee table or whatnot, I don't want it super tall. You know, I want these things to be tight. The other thing about it is, by arranging my roses like this, I have too many stems that will go down, they last a little longer, because you know what, roses, they'll start drooping down, right, and fade out, but when they're kind of tightly held together, they kind of just stay, they support each other in staying there. I had this client, I won't tell you who it is because you all know this person, not a member of Garden Club, but I used to do these seasonal arrangements for them every year. And I'm not kidding you, he would call me and say, okay, can you come do another one? I still have the container from last year, whatever. And I would come to the house to get it, and it was still in the container. Still there, and I'm like, oh, this is like a, you know, all still there, but still pretty preserved, dead, but, you know, yeah.
How long will the roses last in the oasis? Same as water, or a little longer?
A little longer, especially if they're arranged tight. You know, if it's like for special occasions, I'll sometimes do a whole box and they're just tight like that, super short, you know, and they'll stay like that. I did one like that for our family for Valentine's last year, and it stayed for 2 weeks. Just because if they're short and they're tight, you know, together, and they kind of open up, but they don't have the ability to, you know, droop. So they just kind of dry away. I've done these kind of arrangements for clients before, and they were entertaining at the beginning of the month, and I've told them, these are gonna die. This you can keep going and replaced. But they were able to keep these going for a few weeks and then pull them out, and then they filled it with fruit in the middle or whatever. They just kept like a living arrangement, you know, going. But the tighter the flowers are placed together, the longer they're gonna last for themselves, just because of the way that they're set up. But I would mist them like once a day. I mean, it's just like mist, lightly mist, and it just kind of gives them hydration up here because they're getting hydration below. And then if it's not in a out of sun, you're gonna have a lot more, you know, room for it too. So if this is for a specific event, I'll do it the day, like at my house, I'll do my holiday centerpiece like the day before, because I want it, unless I want the roses to kind of mature a bit, but usually the day before, and then it's as fresh as I want it for the table, and then I let it kind of just take its course, you know, for the next few weeks or so. But the nice thing about this is that making arrangements like this is relatively inexpensive, because you all have containers. You can all get a hold of Oasis, whether it be, you know, right at the floor. Always ask for it. You'll never see it at a floral counter in a grocery store. But if they have a floral department there, they usually have a case of Oasis back in their storeroom, and just ask for it. And they are always willing to sell it, especially the big King Supers down here, the one by the outlets. So this is how I'll kind of like stagger around in these arrangements, but add your own personality to it. Add, you know, blooms that speak to you. Experiment with colors you like as well. But I really think it's more coming down to the greens. And I haven't even counted. When I make these, I probably put 12 to 18 roses in them if I'm doing strictly roses. But you can see, pull this up. You can see how that just kind of is mounded. And they're different heights as well because I wasn't like perfect with it. Do you see what I mean?
Do you ever use that preservative in the water?
I don't. No, I'm really bad. I don't. I just make sure it's clean water. But see, it's just different heights. And so this is why you can do it. You don't have to worry about where the roses are placed. Because they don't need to all be exactly the same. Okay? Okay, so, and then the other thing I sometimes do, if I have them, is I love adding feathers, like pheasant feathers to arrangement, especially at Christmas time. I don't know, I just love that look.
I'll have to tell you a story about Tasha. So when her brothers, I'm her mother, so when her brothers would go pheasant hunting, she says, Scott, just bring home the feathers. Just bring me the
They were
feathers.
disgusting, grubby, bloody feathers. I'm like, I'm used to buying them clean. But I think it just adds such a nice texture. I don't know why I like feathers during the holidays, but I just think added into arrangements, it's just kind of one more. But do you see what I'm saying? You could go as far with this as you want. Or you could have just kept it the way that I originally showed it to you and I just had it prepped without adding embellishments. And no one will know. It's not like I will not do this to you, I promise, but it's not like anyone's gonna come to your house and be like, gosh, that would look a lot better if you put this there. Or feathers, or, you know, you didn't use enough green texture, or, no, they're just gonna say, wow, what a pretty arrangement, and I can smell Christmas in your house, right? That's what they're gonna say, and that's what you're gonna say walking by it, right? But you see, just adding a little bit of feathers in there too. Okay, so I'm going to put this one over here. And then the one other thing I wanted to show you today is how to design a mantelpiece. Oops, I'm gonna like. Okay, are we on there? All right, so one of the things that's fun to do, especially if it's for, you know, the day of, like, you know, you wanted it just for Christmas or New Year's or whatever, is to design a mantelpiece. So it's a one. I'm gonna like, what am I gonna take out when I whip this around? So when I mean that, the back doesn't need to have a whole lot going on because no one's going to see the back. So this is a perfect kind of arrangement to do if you're designing something for your buffet, or if you have a mantle on your fireplace that's deep enough to accommodate some sort of dish with some width there. I know a lot of the new modern fireplaces barely have a lip on that, but if you have a more traditional fireplace, you at least have enough that you could put something like this on. So this vessel, this is one of my favorite vessels, and Dee Metcalf said she had it too. We got it at Home Goods. Isn't it like stunning? And I have several pieces in this line too, but I just think they're absolutely beautiful. It's such a beautiful dish, but I love it for designing. So anyway, so what I did with this is the same. I kind of started this because there's just not time for me to like do it from like start to finish with you. So I did Oasis in it. I just have one brick in here. So the brick's actually kind of low, but it's enough to like hold the stems. And then I started with the greens. Now, if I'm working on a mantelpiece or whatever, I can go as big as I want, you know? And so that's the thing is, when you're dealing with those kind of vessels, you can be more dramatic with the pieces too. Whereas the centerpieces, you can't have it going 4 feet off here because then 2 people can't sit there, you know, but on these kinds of things, like, you can have fun with it and go as dramatic as you want. So I was really looking at greenery, you know, to give me the space up. And if I had this in place in a space I was designing, I might even just go bigger, because it's just fun, you know, to do that. You want to just make sure you're weighted down in the back. So even though you're making a front heavy arrangement, you don't want it to be top heavy. So I do weight it down with other greens in the back to help support that. So the first thing I did is I really was building it out strictly as greens first. And this is where it's fun to cut in your yard, or cut where you can, because you can really take a look at a branch and say, I love that shape. Not everyone's going to be like that, right? And that's going to give me like a great arcing shape that I want on an arrangement. Or twigs that you have in your yard. If you like, you know, the wild nature of them, that's going to help add height and dimension. But you can see, you know, what that does for me when I place that in, how that really can arc that shape up, if that's what I was trying, you know, to create there, which is really fun when you're not limited to space that way. So the other thing that's nice about this is, again, don't be scared of going wild and trying it a bit, because there's no bad place to place anything in an arrangement. Just keep telling yourself, I'm doing the French thing, I'm doing the French thing. This is the way it looks in nature, right? Because then you really can't go wrong, and it's not scary of like, oh, if one's here, then it needs to be there and there, whatever. I do like to work in odd numbers if I'm working with different blooms, just because visually it just looks better. So that means either like, if I'm sticking a big pomegranate in or whatever, I'll probably just do 1. Or if it's an all-sided arrangement, maybe I'll have 3, where I have 1 on one side and 2 weighted on another side. It just visually looks better. The hydrangeas I tucked in here, I did 3. I'm not going to do 4. If I do 4, it's going to be 1 on the other side to anchor it there, but visually that's where I'm looking. So what I used in this one is, all of this was Costco yesterday. So lily packs, spray roses, and then again, the reason I like the spray roses is, do you see how they're different heights? And that's on the one stem. So like in that arrangement that I did paving in there, by me placing 1 stem in, it just gave it a lot of depth. Does that make sense? And spray roses take up a lot of space too, and they kind of have a wild look to them. So if you find ones that you like and the color you like, those are great to use. The lilies are great. I always design them when they're closed, because if I'm making something like this, it's going to evolve to where I want it to be for my event. But I like some of them closed. For me personally, I like the texture of having some open and some closed. It changes the whole look of this design once everything is open, open, open. And that's the thing about arrangements like this, is they evolve over days. It's kind of like when you do any sort of bulb plant in your home, the paper whites, the amaryllis, the hyacinths, you watch that evolution of them growing the stalk and then blooming, and then they can kind of continue to evolve. It's the same way when you're dealing with arrangements like this, so have fun with them. And then if you don't like the way something's looking, I take it out. Like, okay, you're done, and I take that bloom out. Don't like where that came in anymore, or you know, whatever, you can pull it out or change. So when designing like this, do your shape first, and then it doesn't have to be finished. You saw how on the other one, I showed you how to add additional greens. So this is what I did on this one, was I started the shape, and then I kind of started seeing where do I want to put things. The first thing I always do after I do the shape is to anchor whatever I'm going to do big and heavy. And if I'm using big blooms, like let's say you're using the sunflowers that are on the tables now, they're heavy heads. And so if I'm placing them in an arrangement like this, I'm going to place them low, and I'm going to kind of anchor the arrangement with them. And that's what I do with the pomegranates, or if I put pears in something like this, because it's not like whatever arrangement has them, where it can be an edge thing because it's kind of sitting there. And here you're going to be anchoring your visual with that. So I placed my big pomegranate here, and then I thought, oh, I like the whites. I like the whites with these greens, so why don't we go whites? Now, hydrangeas, I love them. I'm terrified to use them if it's anyone else's event but mine, because they're so persnickety, and they just like, They love you one day, and 20 minutes later I walk by and I'll be like, oh my gosh, the whole thing is wilted. You know, we gotta. So when they're super requested for something, I always order double, because I'm gonna lose like heads here and there, and you want to be able to pull it out and throw a new one in. So just know that if it's for something at your house, put it in right when you need it, and it'll be fine for that day, and it might love you the next day, or it might be dead by the end of the night. I mean, that's just the way that they are. They love cold, and they love staying hydrated, but you can't keep them submerged, you know, the whole time. So if you're designing the day ahead, do not do that. Just kind of keep your hydrangeas where you want to go and then throw them in. So what I've done on this is, okay, so I'm going to show you I'm going to try to do this back. So now I'm going to add in some other texture. And as I said before, I'm doing this as a one-sided arrangement, so I'm really not going to focus a lot on the back unless I need to anchor it with weight, and then I'll keep adding more greens to it. But what I kind of do is I'll pick a stem of something and kind of like move it around to see where do I want it to be popping out. And the nice thing about working with Oasis, as far as these type of arrangements, is if you don't like where you placed it, pull it out and place it somewhere else. So I just placed this right here. I'm trying to get this arrangement to come out a bit for me. So you're going to have some flowers that are going to stay in, and then you're going to have some flowers that are going to creep out to you as well. Now, with it being holidays, I think it'd be fun to add some red in with it. The other thing that you can do, and it's always a fail-safe thing, especially if you're new to floral design, is just stick with one color then. You can't go wrong. Like, you're going to do all whites. So get like just all white flowers then, or you're going to do all greens, or you're going to do all reds. And then you don't have to worry about it visually of, you know, if I place that color in the right spot or whatever. Just work color code. And I still do that because I actually love arrangements that are just one color scheme. I think they're super pretty, but if you're using other textures and colors for with it, that adds, you know, dimension. But I just think it's really kind of fun to just have all whites or all greens, or it's very French too, so that's probably why I like that. But it's very forgiving as well. Oh, I forgot that I had that Oasis way down there, so I need to cut these stems like. And then the other thing, depending on when I want to use this arrangement, is where the state of my rose is. Sometimes I'm okay with them being closed up because they're going to evolve for me, and other times if it's day of, I kind of want them open. So if it's a sturdy enough rose, I'll kind of put my fingers in like this a bit, or if it's a really sturdy rose, and I know some of you have seen this before, then I just open it up like that. If they're very delicate garden roses, don't do that. You're just going to have lots of free petals to shoot everywhere. But you know, if it's hardy, it's like the stem is super stiff, but it feels very intact. It's a very sturdy rose, and so if it's a sturdy rose, then yes, you can manipulate it, and it doesn't hurt just to kind of, you know, open them up. But like, just like the lilies, I like some open and I like some closed because visually it just looks really good. So what I'm doing with this, and I'll turn it around now. I only have one brick in here, so it's really low, and I have to forget. I want that one higher. That's not even in. Okay, there we go. So the one thing that you don't want is you don't want them all at the exact same height. You know, I wanted to create some height with this, but do you see how these are at different heights though? If they're all at the same height, it just does look kind of weird. And you can do that. That's an easy skill to say, okay, that's at a different height. So either push one further down, like 1/4 to 1/2 inch, or pull one up more. That's the other great thing about using Oasis, is that you can do that. You know, like when I'm freeform styling, you can't do that. I mean, it's, you know, nothing is holding it there, but this one I can kind of, you know, manipulate up a bit or push it down further. See? So So this, I'm kind of working in threes as well, you see, and I'm just gonna kind of move across the arrangement, which is just going to give it a little more color pops. And then what it did is, you saw how when I added that red in, what did it make stand out? The pomegranate, because then it drew your eye down to the little pop of red that was below. If you wanted to stick total monotone and have it really be a very similar color wash, then I would do an artichoke there, or a green apple, or a nice sized pear. I love working with artichokes. The textures are fabulous on those. I didn't know, I had them in Washington, you could like grow everything, anything. And so we grew artichokes one year in our garden, and I was expecting that summer, so I didn't pick anything. I gardened that year, and I didn't realize they completely bloom. Have you ever seen an artichoke bloom?
Yeah.
It's amazing. It's like a huge, big thistle. It's absolutely gorgeous, and I thought, oh, I had no idea. Maybe we don't pick those. Maybe I wait for them to bloom, because the color palette was absolutely fabulous. But that's why I love using things that are a little more natural, because it really highlights the beauty of that particular fruit or that particular stem in a way that you wouldn't have seen it before, because when you buy things in the store that have been harvested, you're not finding them in their natural, growing state. They've been harvested for you to use them, but if we're able to let them pop out a little longer, how fun. So see how I'm just kind of moving across that way? I'm sorry, I can't design like completely backwards. But I might want to keep one open. So I might, have one up here a little higher that's going to be on the background. And then you'll just keep moving across your thing. But again, this is strictly for if you're doing one-sided arrangements, which is fun. I actually think it's harder to design arrangements that are all-sided. And just you see how the different height pattern I'm going there. So you can just do that red wash over the top. And then when you're finished, I'll finish this out, but when I'm all done, then what I'll do is I'll come through and what do you think I'm looking for? The nice thing is if it's up on a mantle, no one's gonna see it. So that's the thing, is when I'm designing like large scale on a mantle or whatever, for me it's about visually what you're going to see there, because no one can see down, especially if it's in a closed vessel like this, you're not seeing the stems. So I'm not as worried about it. I'm more concerned of the height of the different things I'm placing in the arrangement and how the arrangement's filling out, because you're not going to see those things because it's not on a coffee table where you're gonna walk by and be like, oh, that's great foam that those things are in. But then what I'll do at the very end, as I did in the other two arrangements, is I like to go back through and then add the sparkles. I always feel like there's one little more texture you can add. There's another little, something you can add. So for this, I probably go back through and then add, these textures in, because that's going to give it a different dimension to add that ponderosa pine in over here as well. And so those are kind of the finishing things that I would look at. Or is there a fine twig that I found outside to kind of give it some other airy height, here and there. But again, you just can't go wrong. I just think it's all about having fun with the blooms and creating something that's exciting for you. And I think that that's really the beauty of floral design is, and that's why I love this wild way, is that you're bringing the beauty outside in, and you're trying to display it in a state that highlights the true nature of the blooms and greens that you're using. And when you arrange it in that sort of way, then you appreciate each and every individual bloom, the different textures, you see different colors, and it just plays together. And when it rolls forth kind of wild like this, you don't miss what's not there. Does that make sense a little bit? So I have no idea what my time is, but I think it's about time.
We just love hearing you.
Okay. Well, anyway, I hope this has inspired you to bring the outdoors in this holiday season. And even if it's as simple as, again, buying a cypress tree at the nursery and putting it in a basket or a vessel or whatever on your kitchen counter or in a bedroom, some place that you can really smell and feel the sense of the season. And then again, pull out all the boxes. I know you're like me. I know that you have troves of boxes of ornaments that you don't bring out anymore. But that is the fun part of doing stuff like this, is you're able to highlight ornaments or things that you can't see in other places, or would it be lost on your tree? You know, but when we highlight it in small groupings and small arrangements in the house, I love doing it in bedrooms. Isn't it so fun to have something seasonal in the bedroom, especially during December? I love that. I love to be able to smell it, see it, just something extra that way. And this is a great way to highlight pieces that would get lost in other larger groups and settings. But more so, bring the scents in. Go clip. You all have friends that have great trees and shrubs. Well, in fact, this one friend in particular of mine was like, no, you can't cut that one. I'm like, you're never gonna even tell I was here. This is like, you know, massive greens. But see how pretty they are inside, and then it's you really appreciating the textures and the beauties and nature around you, and then making it special in your own family setting. So thank you for having me again. And I want to see your pictures. I know that every year I usually get a text or two from Garden Club members sending me what they've done in their vessels at home. I love that. Send me your pictures. Show me what you're doing this year. It can be as small as can be, or it can be larger scale, but go start digging in your yard. Anyway.